Hello and welcome to this video where we'll be discussing how Bitcoin transactions work. As a decentralized digital currency, Bitcoin transactions operate differently than traditional transactions. In this video, we'll be exploring the various components that make up a Bitcoin transaction and how they work together to facilitate the transfer of value. The components of a Bitcoin transaction. There are several components that make up a Bitcoin transaction. Inputs. Inputs refer to the Bitcoin that is being spent in a transaction. These inputs are typically unspent outputs from previous transactions that are used as the input for the current transaction. Outputs. Outputs refer to the Bitcoin that is being received in a transaction. These outputs are typically assigned to specific addresses, which are owned by the recipient of the Bitcoin. Transaction ID. The transaction ID is a unique identifier that is assigned to every Bitcoin transaction. This ID helps to track the transaction on the blockchain and ensures that it cannot be duplicated or tampered with. Transaction fees. Transaction fees are a small amount of Bitcoin that is paid to the miners who verify and process the transaction. These fees help to incentivize miners to include the transaction in a block on the blockchain. How a Bitcoin transaction works. Now that we've covered the components of a Bitcoin transaction, let's take a look at how a transaction actually works. The sender creates a transaction by specifying the amount of Bitcoin they want to send and the address of the recipient. The sender's Bitcoin wallet will then use unspent outputs from previous transactions to fund the transaction. The transaction is broadcast to the Bitcoin network, where it is verified and processed by miners. Once the transaction is confirmed by the network and included in a block on the blockchain, the Bitcoin is transferred to the recipient's address. The recipient can then access the Bitcoin using their private key, which is stored in their Bitcoin wallet. Transaction confirmations. Transaction confirmations are an important aspect of Bitcoin transactions. As a decentralized currency, Bitcoin transactions are verified and processed by a network of miners. These miners compete to solve complex mathematical problems in order to add new blocks to the blockchain. Once a transaction has been included in a block and added to the blockchain, it is considered confirmed. The number of confirmations required for a transaction to be considered secure varies, but generally, the more confirmations a transaction has, the more secure it is. This is because each new block that is added to the blockchain increases the difficulty of reversing or altering previous transactions. Conclusion. So, in conclusion, Bitcoin transactions operate differently than traditional transactions. They are decentralized, transparent, and rely on a network of miners to verify and process transactions. By understanding the components of a Bitcoin transaction and how they work together, you can gain a better understanding of how Bitcoin operates as a currency. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.